Welcome back. My name is Jackson. Today we're going to be looking at some juicy Vegas lines and how they are, integrated into ADP and where we're taking them in drafts right now. I just want to preface this as, these lines are made for both sides, over or under. I just kind of use these as like a starting block or bumpers to kind of get a feel of like where Vegas kind of sees these players, playing out this season and how they do. But just to give you guys, a heads up, I wanted to say that I don't love all these players. I don't hate all these players. Some of them I like more than others, but we are going to be looking at 7 players today, and let's just hop right into it. First player we are going to be looking at is Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions, right now going at quarterback 16. That's about the 9-10 turn in drafts right now. He's currently projected for 4,100 passing yards, which is actually the best, or if not the best, maybe 1 or 2, and 29.5 touchdowns, which is, I think, either tied for second or third in those projections. For him, it's pretty simple. He's not going to get it done on the ground for you, but he's going to get it done through the air. I mean, last season, he's throwing for like 4,500 yards year in and year out. The touchdowns is around 30 or higher year in and year out as well since he's been with Detroit. Not much has changed. He still has some of the best weapons in the league with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta, and of course, probably the best fantasy pick this year, Jahmyr Gibbs. That 4,100-yard passing mark and this 29.5 touchdowns is just super juicy to look at because, like I said, he's going at quarterback 16, which is, that's a good QB2 in, normal fantasy leagues that are only starting one quarterback a week. But if he's tracking these numbers and he's actually playing this well in the season, he's easily a top 12 quarterback for you and your team. He's going to be in a great offense. Nothing has changed, and they're just projected to score a ton of points. So really, Jared Goff, I think, should be rated higher than he is right now as quarterback 16. Next player we're going to be talking about is Tyler Shough, going at about quarterback 20. That's about the 10-11 turn in drafts. And right now he's projected per Vegas like 3,700 yards and 20 touchdowns, which is pretty solid. Those projections pretty much land him around a lot of, stellar quarterbacks in the league like Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, CJ Stroud, Josh Allen, Caleb Williams, Jordan Love, Bo Nix, all in those passing yard range that he's in as well. Some better, some worse. The thing I like most about Tyler Shough is he's attached to this Kellen Moore offense, who is going to be up-tempo. They're going to run a lot of plays, and their passing game is going to be pretty good with 2 weapons of Chris Olave and Jordan Tyson that I like a lot. Kellen Moore is going to lead an efficient offense, and like I said, very up-tempo. And even if they are winning or losing, they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. So I'm really in love with this passing game this season for the New Orleans Saints. And another aspect of his game is that he's not really a zero on the ground. Last year, he averaged about 4.5 carries per game and 18 yards per game. So if we see, a little bit of an uptick in rushing a little bit, which we probably should because he's going to play the whole season, I could see him maybe getting 6, 7, 8 carries a game for, 20, 30, 40 yards per game and probably a couple more touchdowns on the ground. This offense is going to be pretty good, so I think they're going to be inside the red zone a lot more this season. But overall, his projection for his passing yards around those guys like Josh Allen and Bo Nix and CJ Stroud and Jordan Love, I think that's a good telltale sign that maybe Tyler Shough in this offense can really do something this season. Next up, we have Jameson Williams of the Detroit Lions, kind of paired up with Jared Goff. He's going at wide receiver 26, around that 4-5 turn. His projections per Vegas is 900 yards and 5 touchdowns. The 900 yards is a little enticing just because, Amon-Ra and Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs are on his team, but Vegas has a pretty high number for him. And really, the situation for him and Jared Goff, they really haven't changed. There's still Amon-Ra, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs. We've been through that. He's just a guy that's gotten better every single season. Last year he finished at wide receiver 12, which is pretty awesome. And he eclipsed 100 targets over the course of the season last year with Jared Goff, so that's a plus for him. You could argue Amon-Ra, takes away from him, which he definitely does, but I also think that Amon-Ra and these other weapons, I think there's just so many on this team that the defenses have to cover everyone. They can't double, Amon-Ra. They can't, double over the middle against Laporta. They have to split up and go all their separate ways and just play defense it's very hard to against this, wide receiver core and offense as a whole. And that's where the big plays come in. You know, if a defense is more focused on Amon-Ra for one play, J-Mo will sneak behind the defense and hit the big play because that's his bread and butter with just his speed and athleticism. But I think the 900-yard mark is fair for him. I just think, you know, if this offense is going to be clicking and Goff's going to throw for those projected yards that we talked about or even more, I think that, you know, there's room for him to hit the 1,000-yard mark again, and his touchdown ceiling is pretty big in this offense. Next up, we have Davante Adams of the Los Angeles Rams. He's going at wide receiver 25, around that same mark, that 4.5 turn in drafts. His projection is 775 yards, but 9.5 touchdowns, which is a large number. That's, you know, second in the league. Jamar Chase is number 1 at 10.5, and then he's tied for second with 9.5. I think the reason his touchdown line is so high is because this Rams offense is going to be throwing to him in the red zone, just like they did last year, 14 touchdowns in like 14 or 15 games last year. This mold, they're not just going to throw away. I think they're going to just run it back. It's going to be Puka and Davante running all the routes. They're going to target Davante, who's a big body frame, in the red zone. And Matt Stafford just has this chemistry with Davante that he's going to throw to him. He likes him. His targets per route run was 7th highest in the league, along with Puka. So Puka and Davante are running all the routes and getting targeted at a high rate just because of this Rams offense is going to be so good. And I think that it's going to play out the same way this year. They also did not add any wide receivers to this offense. I mean, behind them is no names like Mumfield and Tutu Atwell, if he's even still on the roster, but they didn't add anyone. I'm not surprised because they just had this mold that they're sticking with and they're running it back just like last year. I wouldn't be surprised if his yards end up around this, 800, 900 yard mark, but his touchdowns are over 10 again. Next up, we have Tet McMillan with the Carolina Panthers. He's going at wide receiver 19. That's in the 4th round of drafts right now. His projection is 950 yards and 6.5 touchdowns. He has been slipping in drafts a little bit. I think a lot of people are, a little bit afraid to draft him right now, which is understandable. He was in a pretty tough environment last year, but he overcame a lot. He ended up winning Rookie of the Year, had a ton of catches, over 1,000 yards and a good amount of touchdowns as well. He commanded the offense. I mean, just going through these numbers, it was a 25% target share, 33% first read share, 6th highest air yard share of 40.9%, and 4th highest deep target share, which was about 51%. Those are pretty good metrics for an elite wide receiver, usually not someone you see in your first year. And even with those elite volume indicators, it really is just going to come down to Bryce Young in this offense. I'm not in love with Tet just because he's attached to Bryce Young in this offense. I think he's got some untapped potential maybe with another quarterback down the road. But for now, we're looking at this year. It's a hesitant for me, but he's a big body receiver that's going to go up and get it. He can run the routes. He can do it all throughout the route tree and, the underneath stuff. I just think it really just comes down to if Bryce Young can throw for yards this year. Last year, he was averaging like 190 yards per game, which is abysmal. So if Bryce Young can throw, an average 250, even that would be amazing for Tet. He's going to get more targets and more yards, obviously, but he is commanding that, Carolina Panthers wide receiver room right now. And with that being said, I think he does have a pretty safe floor in fantasy this year, but the ceiling is what I'm questioning. Next up is DJ Moore. He's going at wide receiver 27, which is about middle of the 5th round. He's projected for 825 yards, 6.5 touchdowns. I think a lot of the fact that he's going so late in drafts is that he really hasn't had like that ceiling year. He's left some sour taste in people's mouths. He's not the wide receiver that we all thought he would be, and I think it's showing right now in drafts. But this year, he's attached to Josh Allen. His projections are around guys like Mike Evans, Rome Odunze, Luther Burden, Colson Loveland, Jameson Williams, Christian Watson, T. Higgins, DK, Sutton, Marv. And that's all in yards alone. I think a lot of them he's better than. Some of them he's worse than. It's just that whole grouping right there is guys that he's projected around for yards. A lot of those guys have been getting so much hype and, more coverage than him, and they're around the same projections. I mean, what if Josh Allen just goes berserk again this year and DJ Moore is an attachment to him and he's wide receiver 1 of the, that offense, and we see 120 targets from DJ Moore. I think it's a very real possibility for him and just this Bills offense as a whole. I personally don't love him as a player, but if there's a situation that I may want to be attached to, it's definitely this one. you know, the Bills and Josh Allen, they got a lot to prove still year in and year out. They need a wide receiver that can, you know, elevate this game again now that Stephon Diggs is gone. I think DJ Moore could step into that role. I'm really just not in love with him as a player, but the offense is something that you need to be attached to for sure. The seventh and final player of this video is going to be a running back, Javonte Williams of the Dallas Cowboys. Right now he's going at running back 17. That's at about the 3-4 turn in drafts. His projection is looking at 950 yards, 9.5 touchdowns, and even 225 yards through the air, which is pretty solid. When I look at him, I know he's going to be attached to a very good offense. I look at a lot and see Josh Jacobs from a few years ago, you know, a guy that's, you know, attached to a good offense, and he's a product of that because, you know, touchdowns come from good offenses that get in the red zone a lot, and I think that's what Javonte Williams was last year, and I think he's going to do that again this year. They have a pretty solid to very good O-line, depending on if they have some younger guys step up, but at the very least, they'll be pretty solid. And they didn't add anyone to this running back room. Jadon Blue really isn't a factor for me. He barely played last year. We really don't know, you know, what he is. I don't think he's very much, but they didn't add anything else or anyone to this room. So it's really just the Javonte show. I think he's going to get 75% of the snaps, and that's going to be huge for him in fantasy. They basically said they're running it back. Last year he had 4.8 yards per carry, which is very good, and he saw 15 plus opportunities in every game except for 2. I think both of those alone gives you such a high floor that, you know, this Cowboys offense is just going to be very good. He's going to be a product of that. And I think maybe the reason why he's going a little bit later in these drafts is just because of the way things ended last season. But if you look back to, you know, the first 14 games last season, he was amazing. There was, you know, rushing touchdowns week in and week out for him. I think that's what we're going to see a lot this year, and he's going to be a product of that very good offense that we keep talking about. Now that's all 7 players for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I just wanted to dive into some Vegas lines and look at them with you guys. But if you're new around here, make sure you subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like. I'd really appreciate it. But you guys have a good one.